trying to watch live video for school right now.
Oh, come on. I'm waiting for this website to load, but it's kind of taking a while. Shoot. Oh, yay, it's working. Okay, so we only have two people in. If you guys want to play trivia, go for it. If you don't, we're just going to go through the questions, so no big deal. If you do want to play the trivia, all you have to do is go to kahoot.it, and it should show. Yeah, so kahoot.it is up on the top there. If you want to sign into that, just go to that website, and then all you have to do is put your PIN in. And sorry, you two, I'm working from a laptop that no longer has a workable video camera, but feel free to put your video on if you want. What's the weather like there, Missy? It looks sunny.
It is sunny.
Nice. It's sunny out here too, about 80 degrees. I'm in Washington. Where are you?
I'm in Flint, Michigan.
Oh, nice. Very cool. I'm from Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I grew up close to Lake Superior, or the Great Lakes, I should say.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's see. Well, we're going to go through this trivia. If nobody wants to participate, that's totally cool too. The way to participate would be to go to kahoot.it. But if you don't want to do that, that's totally cool. And then you would put your number in, but we can just get started. Let's see if maybe I could do.
Okay.
Let me see. Oh, I don't think I'll be able to do it if nobody is in there. Dang. Maybe I'll be able to. Probably not. All right, we can just scrap that. It was cool for a second, but I don't think that's going to work out. Maybe next time. Okay, so today's lesson is about writing a narrative. And specifically, you four, I think we only have 4 in the class, or 3 actually. Elena, Pamela, and Missy. Are you all in English 9? And you can either unmute yourself or just type in the chat box. Are you all in English 9? And if not, let me know what other class you're in, because I'll just cater to what classes you are in. Is that Missy? You're in English 9?
Yes, I am.
Cool, Missy. Okay, since you're the only one who answered, I'm going to go off you. If you have any questions, please stop me and let me answer them for you. Okay, Missy?
Okay.
Super. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so writing a narrative. What is a narrative essay? Oh, a chat. Yay. Okay, Pamela, you're in English 10? Okay, cool. So English 10, Pamela, and I still think you should watch this or hang out with me for an hour because you're going to learn a lot of different stuff about stories and about writing. But I also made, last week, I made an English 10 video on how to write your descriptive essay. So if you want to email me, and I'll type my email in, add to you, I can send you that YouTube video because that's specifically about your descriptive essay. So I sent you my email. I chat messaged my email. So just send me an email and I can send you that YouTube video that I made last week. But thanks for chiming in. I still think you should hang out with the class though, Pamela. All right, who else we got? Oh, sweet, more people are coming. Hey, Karen. We tried to play trivia in the beginning, but it was kind of hard for people to get involved, so we had to skip that. So we're just going right into a narrative essay. So what is a narrative essay? Well, you might ask. A narrative essay is a story, okay? It has a specific point and strives to teach a lesson or strives to make a specific point. It's not a diary entry, so it's not like an entire summary of a day. That would be too long and too uninteresting. So a narrative is a little bit more. I need to check my chat here. Sweet, Pamela's gonna stay. All right, Pamela, awesome. Excuse me, sorry, I had to cough. What should be included in a narrative essay? It should be written in first person, which means you're speaking about yourself like how I'm speaking right now. I did this, I did that, we did this, we did that. It can also be written in third person, but it's rarely written like that because it sounds kind of impersonal. It's not written in second person. Second person is like how a recipe would be written. Like, first you do this. It's not written like that. Narratives usually follow chronological order, but you can also include some flashbacks or flash forwards to make it more interesting. It has a purpose, and for English 9, oh yay, we have more people. Sweet. Nick. Hi, Nick. Hi, Rachel. Truly Blessed. Hey, Truly Blessed. Thanks for joining the class. We tried to play trivia in the beginning, but it was kind of too hard. So sorry, we're going right into the nitty-gritty of narrative essays. Okay, you're also going to include sensory details and descriptions in your narrative. What else does a narrative essay need? Well, sorry, I'm muting everyone. Okay. It needs a plot, characters, which is basically you and anyone else you were interacting with. It needs some type of problem and some type of most interesting part of the story, which is the climax of the story. Sometimes it uses dialogue and sometimes it uses flashbacks or flash forwards. Flashbacks are when you flash back in time. It's like when you're watching a movie and it's in the present moment and then all of a sudden it's like a flashback to their childhood. Movies do it a lot, and then flash forwards are, of course, it's in the present time or it's in the past, and then they flash forward to the future. And you can do that in narratives too. So when you're planning a narrative essay, you need to brainstorm, you need to come up with a thesis. And your English 9 class is organized where you come up with you have a prompt. When I knew I was, or the moment I knew I was no longer a child, that's your prompt. And so that's actually going to turn into your thesis statement. And you're going to kind of, from that, build on plot, or build like a exposition, which is the first part of your story, the rising action, the climax, and then the resolution of your story. So you want to start with a thesis statement. And we already talked about that, so we're going to skip that. You're going to outline parts of the story or write out the story. And the way we do it in English 9 is we take it by paragraph. So you'll write an exposition, a rising action, another rising action, the climax, and the resolution. And we'll go through that outline together as a class today. Okay, so here are some examples of an introduction. So, it was a wonderful week to camp in the great outdoors, even if some of their friends thought it was a strange way to honeymoon. Trudy and Jeff were looking forward to their week at Great Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee. Little did they know what a learning experience this trip would be. Oftentimes, people do not follow simple directions. However, these campers learned just how important following directions can be. Now, this story is written in third person. I would not recommend that for the assignment because, like I said, it's kind of sounds impersonal. If it was written in first person, it would be, me and Jeff were looking forward to the week at Great Smoky Mountain. That would be first person, and that's, I would suggest how you write your personal narrative. Then usually in the introduction too, you kind of set the scene, like perhaps what might be going to happen. So it says, after a scenic drive through the glorious mountains, Trudy and Jeff arrived at the camping area. A ranger at the booth handed them a map and asked, have you ever camped with us before? A better question would be if we ever camped before, Jerry answered wryly. You'll be fine. Just remember, this isn't a hotel. We do have bears and other animals in the area. So lock your food up in the car, said the ranger as he handed them a list of do's and don'ts. Okay, so there's like kind of some background information. And we're not going to read this whole thing, but this would be the rising action. And in other words, the rising action would be like, what is going to add to this problem? What is building up to that most intense moment? Now, a lot of students write about the first time they became a parent, and like a lot of the adult students. And that's a great topic. I would say that would probably be the most intense moment of my life as well. And that's a great topic. However, what you shouldn't do is write about your entire pregnancy or the entire pregnancy of your girlfriend or your wife or whatever. You should write about like the moments leading up to becoming a parent, or that moment you realize. Maybe it wasn't when the child was born, but it was a couple years later, whatever it may be. But don't write about that entire long spread out thing. Don't make it a summary. A summary is a little bit more boring and uninteresting. But if you can focus it into the most interesting moment, right? Like the moment the child was born, or even the moment somebody found out they were pregnant, would be fine. But try not to make it a summary of events because that's not as interesting. So focus it down. All right. And then, of course, the climax is the most interesting and most exciting part of the story. So the moment, oops, not my computer. The moment, the child was born, or the moment you realized you had to pay your bills, or whatever it might be, that would be the most exciting part. And the concluding paragraph is going to explain the resolution. And if you're really good, you can tie in a theme, like what you learned from this experience, right? What you learned from parenthood, or what you learned from getting your first job, whatever it may be. Okay, we are done with this presentation. Whoops, that's my lesson notes. Okay, so my next, and I don't think I said the essential questions, but a narrative essay is usually a story, okay, written from your perspective, and it follows like the plot line of a story. So exposition, which is the introduction, the rising action, everything rising up to the climax, and the climax is the most exciting part of the story, and then the resolution. So what is a thesis? I'm just going to kind of give you some wait time here. If you want to type in the chat box, what is a thesis? And we haven't really talked about it too much, but what do you think is a thesis? Even if you don't know the answer, I kind of got to wait until somebody says something. So what do you think is a thesis if you've never heard that before? Come on, you guys, take a guess. I'm talking to a blank wall here. Yay, somebody said it. Hold on, I check my chat messages. Yay, thanks, Nick. Okay, he says, a thesis is the introductory idea presented in an essay, typically to introduce the themes of the essay. I like that. It's also just the main idea of the essay, and specifically what the essay, the moment the essay focuses about for this narrative. Okay, so, and we take the thesis, so right on, Nick, I appreciate it. Thanks for the participation. And so for this narrative, you had the prompt of, I knew I was no longer a child when. And so we take that one and create our thesis for exactly from that. Okay, great job. Thank you. Okay, the other thing that it talks about, the other idea that is talked about in English 9 is, yay, we got somebody else. Hello, whoever just arrived. Thanks for coming. We're talking about narrative essays. Thanks for joining in. Feel free to participate through the chat or unmute yourself if you have any questions. The other idea we were talking about in English 9 was, I believe this website was linked, and it gives you kind of like some suggestions on how to get going on a narrative essay. So I'm just going to run you through this website. It's also linked in your English 9 class, but I think me just going through it will help a little bit more. So step 1, narrow the focus way down. Okay, select an event that actually happened in real life. The event shouldn't be too personal and inappropriate for school. Obviously, use your best judgment. I think narrative essays are shared into discussion, so you can choose whatever you want to choose talking about, but just realize that some other classmates may be reading it. Of course, your teacher will be reading it, me. And you want to, let's see, the story you tell in your essay should cover no more than 1 hour of real time. And I have to admit, that's a really, really great guideline. But in today's example, I don't think I follow the 1 hour of real life time. However, I do zoom in the climax part, the most interesting part of the story, and I describe that moment in detail. And so, like I said, if you were, say, for example, you were writing about the first time you became a parent, like I said, don't summarize the entire pregnancy or the entirety of everything. Don't summarize. Instead, zoom in to the most exciting part. Maybe it's the day the child was born or the moment. Okay. Thanks for joining. I think somebody else joined. Awesome. Welcome. Feel free to ask any questions, unmute yourself and ask any questions about what we're talking about. Okay. So here are some examples: a car accident or a trip to the ER. Scoring the winning points in a championship game. So something you shouldn't write about is the entire game, right? You don't want to summarize an entire basketball game. That's just, unless you're a super big sports fanatic, your reader's going to be lost and a little bit uninterested. So you want to summarize the most exciting part. Okay, so the winning points. Catching your first wave on a surfboard, or maybe fishing, catching your first fish, something like that would be a good topic for a narrative. However, remember that your narrative prompt was the moment I knew I was no longer a child. So you have to think about, sorry, my laptop is losing battery here. Hold on. So anyways, the moment you became an adult or the moment you were no longer a child, you want to think about those moments in your life and write about those. All right. One second, guys. Sorry, technical difficulty. What's going on? Yay, I got it. Okay, sorry. All right, so next section, organizing a narrative. Okay, when you're organizing the body paragraphs, you want to follow, for the most part, chronological organization, which means time order. So beginning, middle, and end. Okay, you want to start a new paragraph when the story takes a new direction, there's a scene change, and of course, if you add dialogue. Some common transitions for narrative writing, and transitions are just words that signal to the reader that the subject's changing, would include, when this comes up, before, meanwhile, afterward, at the same time, at last, at present, briefly, finally, gradually, immediately. suddenly, shortly, until now, in the past. And those are all on that website that is linked to your English 9 class. Thanks, whoever else showed up to the class. Welcome. Melisha, thanks for chiming in. If you have any questions, just let me know. Okay, we are in the middle of discussing narrative essays, and I kind of just got through the boring parts, so you're in luck. All right, so a thesis, the main idea of your narrative essay, and the narrative essay is a story that's told by you, okay? We went through the website, we went through the Prezi about the narrative essay, and now we're going to draft a narrative together. Now, when I was writing this lesson, I had to write this narrative already because if I'm asked to teach and then also write a narrative at the same time, I don't think I'd be good at both at the same time. And I should note that this is, what I wrote is a rough draft. So this would be like what you would turn in for your rough draft. And then after that, you would revise more, add more descriptions, take out the boring parts, that type of things. But it's just kind of creating a rough draft and going through that. So remember that the prompt was, I knew I was no longer a child when. So think of that moment. Like I said, a lot of students write about their first job, when they became a parent, when they had more responsibility at work, when they graduated high school, when they graduated from, I don't know, like some type of, some have written about like a 4-H club or something, when they had to take care of their siblings, when they had to take care of their own parents, when somebody died in their family, when basically when more responsibilities were put on your plate. So what could you be thinking about what you can be writing about, because as you're going through this, your brain will start to already make connections, okay? So I hope after the end of this, you'll have an idea of what you can write about too. And at the end of this class, we can have Q&A, and you can kind of shoot out some ideas to me if you want. I'm going to mute everyone again, and then just make sure that if you have a question, just unmute yourself, okay? All right. You also saw, I don't know why it's taking so long to load here, but you also saw in English 9 this graphic and the video that goes along with it. I can't remember because I made the video, but I can't remember what the topic was of that specific video, but I take you through how to write a narrative in that video too, and it's a really good resource. So this graphic resembles or represents your 5-paragraph essay. The top box here represents your exposition, which is a fancy word for just introduction or the beginning of your story. The exposition includes the hook and the thesis. Now, I guess I'll ask for participation here. What is a hook? And I will keep my chat box open so I can see, or you can unmute yourself. What is a hook? Has anyone heard that term before? What is a hook? Okay, I'm gonna take that silence as you don't know, which is great because I'm gonna teach you. So a hook is anything that's gonna hook the reader of their attention. So you're gonna hook the reader into reading. Oh yay, chat. Yeah, good. Yeah, truly blessed. Something that captures your interest. Good job. A hook is Nick. A hook is something meant to catch the viewer's attention. Good job, guys. I just didn't wait long enough. Okay, yes, you are correct. So anything that's like really interesting, like your most interesting part of your narrative. Now, it might be like you flash forward to the most intense part of the story, which is what I did. And then, or you ask a question, or you give a vivid description. Those are all basic ways to hook a reader, basically something that's going to get their attention. You'll include your thesis. So the moment I knew I was no longer a child was, and then finish that. And then maybe introduce the main character and the setting of your story. And the setting is another word for the place, the place where your story takes place. Then these 3 boxes represent your body paragraphs. Those are the middle paragraphs in your essay. The rising action is the events that lead up to the climax. So you'll have 1 paragraph devoted to one event, another paragraph devoted to another event, and then the 3rd body paragraph is going to be the climax. And the moment you fail, oh, this one says failed miserably. That's for, that's for the English 11 class. But the climax is the most interesting part of your story. Okay, and then the conclusion is where you're going to resolve all the conflicts, and you will maybe state the lesson learned and that type of thing. Okay, we'll go through it right now. So this is my exposition, and I gotta move this chat thing. So this is my first paragraph, my introduction. Okay, you introduce the characters in the setting, you include your hook, and maybe the characters and the thesis. Okay, so I wrote, because there's definitely this topic for a narrative is pretty personal. So I wrote about something that perhaps some of you might be able to relate to because you've been in a classroom before. But my first year of teaching was where I learned I wasn't a child anymore. And yeah, that's pretty late in life. But it was one of those moments where it's like, I'm standing on my own 2 feet and nobody's really helping me. So my hook was an alarming, like one of those like scenarios in a classroom where you like see on the movies where it's like the class is like, or one kid is just super disrespectful. No big deal. But anyway, so that was my climax because I feel like that would be the most interesting point of the story. And I included it in the hook because it was the most interesting. So I just been told I was a blankety blank, right, in my classroom. So that's the most interesting part of the story. And it kind of makes you want to read more. Like, what? Really? Okay. And then so I described the characters and setting. So I said, yes, this was my first year as a middle school English teacher. It was rough. And I was just shy of 23 years old. I was lucky to have a job as it was the middle of the Great Recession. And I had applied for over 40 teaching positions the summer after I graduated college. And then my thesis is, I knew I was no longer a child when I was in charge of 150 rowdy and unruly middle school students, right? It was just like that moment where you're like, okay, nobody's helping me. This is my job. I got to do this. Let's go, right? Okay, then your next paragraph is your rising action. Now, I focused on the school and and like the scenario of being exhausted, being a teacher, and because that leads up to misbehavior because I was just exhausted in general. And so I described that in 1 paragraph. So here I go. At 23 years old, the hardest thing I'd ever done was to throw myself into a new teaching position in rural Oregon. I had no choice in the matter. I had applied to over 40 teaching positions and only one had offered me a job. It was actually the only interview I'd received as well. No one was hiring. On top of that, I had moved out west from my small Midwest town. I was just telling, shoot, who was it? I was in class. Not Pamela. Missy. I was just telling Missy. She's from Michigan and I'm from Minnesota. So anyways, on top of that, I had moved out west from my small Midwest town and had to commute an hour every day. I would wake up at 5:30, get ready, get out the door by 6:30, and make it school by 7:30, teach, which at that time meant crowd control and failed lesson plans repeatedly. It was exhausting. Then I'd leave school by 4:30, get home by 5:30, try to eat something, then rewrite all my lesson plans for tomorrow. And by that time, it'd be 11 p.m. It was an exhausting, vicious cycle, and I never felt like I actually slept. So I'm sure all of you can probably relate to your first job or your first responsible job where you were in maybe over your head a little bit and you had to be doing every type of thing and a large learning curve and you were exhausted. And so I kind of just described how exhausting that was. So now I needed to describe another aspect that was leading up to the climax, or when, the moment that kids were really, really, I don't know, rowdy in my class. And so I described some student behavior. So one good aspect of the job was that I was kind of left alone in my classroom. Any first-year teacher, especially in a challenging school, will fail every day. I would try a lesson or try to manage behavior and kids would be more disruptive than before, or nobody would turn in their assignment. The students knew it. Their last teacher had left halfway through the year and they were proud of it. They were testing me, trying to see if I'd be loyal enough to stick it out the whole year. They had no idea I was as stubborn as they were, even in my exhausted state. Okay, so that kind of just describes even more the situation that I was in, maybe a little bit about the students, that they were testing me, that the other teacher had left halfway through the year, you know, and I kind of had to like dig my way out of the hole. All right, so the climax. So this is the most interesting part of the story, and it also was the hook. That one moment was the hook of my narrative to make it interesting. So one of the most emotionally exhausting days of my teaching career happened to be on a Friday before Thanksgiving break. I had actually gotten students to follow a routine of sorts, and they were writing silently on a topic related to our reading for the day. One student wasn't participating, and so I asked him to start writing about the topic given. He said no, and then I asked if he had a pencil. He said no, and then proceeded to jump out of desk, throw his paper, call me a blankety blank, and slam the classroom door. The whole class, of course, erupted with laughter. I'm even laughing right now. They hadn't seen something that was disrespectful for a while. I didn't actually know what to do, so I smiled and laughed and replied, "Thank you very much, sir." All right, so obviously that's interesting, right? The moment this teacher is having to teach this wild class and somebody just yells something at her and then slams the door. So that's the climax of the story. The resolution will show maybe a theme or what I learned from this situation or what I learned from my first year teaching. And like I said, you know, you shouldn't summarize the entire year. Like if I summarized the entire year of my teaching, that would be boring. But since I zoomed in the climax of that most exciting moment, it will capture the audience's attention a little bit better. All right, so the resolution. It turns out the student was tired of being asked if he had a pencil because he actually didn't have a pencil. He didn't have any school supplies, and he didn't know where I kept all my extra supplies for students who needed it. He had become frustrated because last night his mom moved into his aunt's house, and they were so far away he couldn't see his friends anymore. So actually, I knew I was no longer a child when I realized to understand and empathize with my students before I taught my students. And so the resolution kind of comes to a conclusion. It gives kind of an explanation for the student's behavior, and that I, you know, as a teacher, I shouldn't take any actions towards me personally, that a lot of times kids are dealing with other things. And of course, this kid didn't have supplies, so no big deal. I could have just given him a pencil, right? And so that's what I learned. And it kind of wraps it up and gives the reader something to think about, like, you know, the moral or the lesson learned from the story. Okay, so if you were going to write, let's go through one more example. Now, this was my example, okay? And when I was writing this, students, when I was writing this, I just sat here and told the story, like as if I was going to tell it to people, right? Like I was going to tell it to you guys. I sat down and I just wrote it from the beginning. And then I kind of focused it down into specific topics that I wanted to talk about, okay? And then so the introduction, that can really give you some guidelines, like follow your hook, introduce the character and the settings, give your thesis, and then the two rising actions, like tell the story, right? Like set the scene. This is how I was so exhausted. This was the classroom that I had. These were the students I had, and a little bit about them. I'm like smiling talking about it because it brings back so many. It was a really fun time, but also very hard. And then the climax was that most interesting moment, and I described that in detail in a paragraph, okay? And then, of course, the resolution is the theme or the lesson learned, and you kind of wrap up the story, give an explanation. Why was this kid so angry with me, and everything else, right? Okay, cool. So let's do an example, and I'll just kind of run through it. All right. Since so many students write about this topic when they became a parent, I'll do that. I'll run through this. So the exposition, if I was writing about a topic, the topic would be the moment I no longer was a child was when I became a parent. Okay, so your exposition would include a hook. Maybe you give it a vivid description of the moment, or you give a description of how you felt. The characters and setting, if you're going to actually write about the birth, or you're going to actually write about meeting the child, or you're going to actually write about the moment you found out, that might be the character and setting. And then the thesis, I knew I was no longer a child when I became a parent. Okay, that would be your thesis. And then the rising action. So maybe this is where it starts in the morning, or maybe this is where you find out that you'll be a parent. The next rising action would be, maybe preparing for a baby, or making arrangements for the hospital. And then the climax is going to be, maybe when the baby is born, maybe when you find out that you're a parent, that most exciting part, and you're going to describe that in detail. And then the resolution, of course, is going to be like, what you learned from that, how you've changed. What you learned or how you've changed from the experience. Okay? All right, I have to check the time because I get talking and I don't have a clock in the bottom here. Okay, cool, we got plenty of time. Okay, so that's kind of that. I don't have too much else to say about a narrative. You kind of have to just get in there and just start telling the story. And like I said, it's going to be 5 paragraphs in length, and in exposition, 2 rising actions, a climax, and a resolution. So 5 paragraphs, and make sure that you have 5 separate paragraphs. And remember that this is just the rough draft. Okay, I would have to, if I turn this in for the rough draft, that'd be great. That'd be perfect. And then for my final draft, I'd have to go through and revise a little bit more, add in more descriptions, add in more details, maybe add some more humor, because this story could be made a little bit funnier. At my expense, I could make more jokes about me as a first-year teacher. But so yeah. And are there any questions about the narrative? Or if you want to just like shoot out a idea that you think would be good for a narrative, and I can give you maybe some suggestions. As you're thinking of that, we talked about what a narrative essay is. It's a story written from your own personal view, and this particular essay is written in 5 paragraphs. What's next after the outline, or not the outline, but the rough draft? You need to revise, add transitions, add descriptive language. Okay, so you're going to add more to this. This is just the rough draft. Turning in basically your outline or your rough draft in paragraph form for the final draft you might not meet expectations, but you definitely won't exceed expectations. So you want to make sure your rough draft is different than your final draft. Yay, chat message. Yeah, so truly blessed, does our paragraph have to be long? Well, I personally don't see, I don't want to encourage you just to write a bunch of words because you have to meet a certain amount of words. Your paragraph doesn't have to be long. Typically paragraphs are 3 to 4 sentences, not 3 to 4, 3 to 6, 3 to 8. And I've read great writing that was just 3 sentences, a paragraph that was just 3 sentences. It's kind of about what words you choose and how descriptive you want to be. So I rarely encourage kids like, you have to write 8 sentences or else I'm not going to grade it. Because I think you can say a lot with saying little, if that makes sense. So I hope I answered your question. But it does have to be 5 paragraphs in length, and it has to be organized in this manner. So does anyone want to shoot out some ideas they're thinking of writing their narrative on, and then I can give you some suggestions? I really wanted to play that trivia game, so let me see if I can play it with you guys. If you're up for it. Exactly, Nick. Nick says, if you can fit your paragraph's message into 3 sentences, do so. Don't stretch things out for no reason. Agreed. And I should state again that the narrative I wrote was a rough draft. Okay, that's just getting started. That's a rough draft. That's not, I mean, if I was going to turn that in for a final essay, that would be fine. It just wouldn't be exceptional, right? Okay, I really want to see if you guys can play this trivia. All right, I need one person to sign into this. So you just have to go to kahoot.it, and then put this game pin in. And let's see if it works. I can't do it because I'm logged into the system. It's just trivia about narratives. And if we're not cool with it, that's fine too. But I was trying to get a trivia game going. Yay! Yay, Katie! Thanks, Katie. All right, maybe, does anyone else want to join? Because I'll just go through you can join maybe next time when we do it. It's kind of crazy. Stop me if you actually want to join. Otherwise, we can just do the questions and you don't have to participate. All right, Katie, all eyes on you then. Okay, what is this? Oops. Did it work? Oh, okay. What is a story about an important event in the writer's life? Woo! Nice work. Yeah, it's a narrative essay. Good job. Oh, Nick's playing. Yay! Thanks, Nick. What is not a part of a narrative essay? Correct. Sermon. That's what you preach. All right. Oh, I'm like losing battery on my laptop. What is the introduction paragraph? Yay, the first paragraph. Good job. What sentence catches the reader's attention? Yep, a hook. Good work. What is a thesis statement? Nice. The main idea of the narrative essay. Good work. What should be included in a body paragraph? I don't know if I talked about that. Oh, yeah, we did. All the above. Good job. What is external dialogue? We didn't talk about external, but I'm sure you could kind of guess. Yep, good job. A conversation between two people. What is internal dialogue? We did not talk about that, but you definitely could add that to your narrative. Yep, a conversation in your thoughts. That would be super good to add to your narrative, like if you were doing something where you're challenging yourself. What is a transition? Yeah, a word that creates organization. It shifts from one topic to the next. Good job. What are the three parts of a conclusion? Yay! Yep. An argument between two opposing forces is I don't think we talked about that, but yeah, you need a conflict in your narrative. So what are you trying to overcome? Which word is not a transition word? Yep, Good job. A name is not a transition word. What punctuation mark do I use for external dialogue? Didn't talk about it, but it's a good pop quiz. That's right, quotation marks. Nick with the lead. What punctuation mark do I use for internal dialogue? Didn't talk about it, but this is a good quiz. None, you use italics. Yeah, if you're talking to yourself, you just put it in italics. Where is the hook in the introduction? Yay! Yep, the very, very, very beginning hooks the reader. Okay, good job, guys. That's all I have. We went through an example. We talked about our narrative essay. So that's all I have. Are there any questions? You can write in the chat box or you can unmute yourself. Also, while you're waiting to think of your questions, I'm going to send you my notes and I'll send you this YouTube video if you have any further questions on narrative essays. Also, feel free to email me with any of your questions, even if you want me to read your rough draft. That is totally fine. Any questions about your narratives? Oh, cool, I can draw. This is neat. All right, if there are no questions, this is cool. If there are no, oh wait, chat. I'm ready for it, yay. Oh, that was you, from you, Katie, nice. Pamela, thank you. I will copy your email address and I will send you an email, okay? I'll send you that YouTube video. All right, if we have no other questions, I'm signing off. Thanks so much, Nick, for participating in the trivia game. I'm sure we'll get more as these study sessions go on, but appreciate it. And bye, Pamela. Bye, let's see if I can call everybody's name. Truly Blessed. I don't know this one number, sorry. Elena, thanks for joining in. Siobhan, Nick, Pamela, thanks y'all. It's been great. Hope you have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.